Welcome to Going Dark, a podcast exploring Netflix's sci-fi series, Dark. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga, and today we're discussing Season 1, Episode 1, entitled Secrets.
Secrets. All right, guys, this is our very first episode of our Dark podcast, but believe it or not, we've been podcasting for quite some time. What podcast did we just finish, Olga?
It's called The 100 Podcast, a show about CW sci-fi series, The 100.
Yes, we just did 5 years of that. We've podcasted on numerous shows. If you're seeing this on a video, you might have seen some of our many other YouTube TV reviews, because this is both a YouTube podcast and an audio podcast. So if you want to see our beautiful faces, you can go to youtube.com/doingOK. But if you don't, there's podcast services for that stuff. So check us out there.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is all about Netflix's Dark. Mm-hmm. We have never seen this show before. So
other than the 2 times that we watched
pilot.
Season 1, Episode 1.
Yes. This show got recommended to us by a bunch of our 100 listeners. Mm-hmm. So we decided to go on this journey in podcast form. So we have only seen this pilot. And each Tuesday we will be releasing a new episode where we talk about a single new episode that we've seen. We won't be having future spoilers because we don't know them.
Right. So also at the end, we'll save this for the end, but there will be a way of contacting us for feedback other than just YouTube comments. Please don't send spoilers in your emails.
If you can.
If you can, which you can.
Yeah. I mean, I accept that I probably will be spoiled in some way or another.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do my best to avoid.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the fun of this is for, especially the majority of the audience will probably have already seen this show before. Mm-hmm. And seeing how off we are with our
terrible
awesome
theories
will be half of the fun.
Right.
So this is the first time we're doing a podcast like this where we haven't seen the show.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting learning process about what the best way to cover it is and all that stuff and what you guys want from us as the audience.
We'll give it our best try. Yeah. And if something isn't working for people or you want us to incorporate a new segment or take a segment out, although right now we're not going to have that many of those, then just that's something we want to hear about. We want this to be entertaining for all kinds of people.
Yeah. For instance, the plan for this podcast is we're going to do just like our general thoughts in a second. Then I'm going to do a quick recap of basically just based off of memory because we just watched the episode. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to dive into individual points of interest that Olga wrote down as like notes to talk about.
Right.
And if you're wanting us to go like more directly, scene by scene, moment by moment, we can take that into consideration. But our thought process here is to make it a little more streamlined, to make these sort of half-hour-ish podcasts.
Yeah.
And so let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
So all of that said, what did you think of the pilot?
I was really intrigued. Mm-hmm. We went into it watching it the first time with the question of, is this going to be interesting enough? Or I should say, is this going to be the kind of show we would podcast about? Yep. So that basically what that means to me is there enough like meat here in this like very early episode, in this first episode, for me to want to like dive into it and really think about it and spend hours paying attention to it? And the answer is yes, like there is. And that to me is a sign of a good pilot. It's a sign of a good episode. So I really liked it. I liked watching it. I liked looking for hints of things on rewatch that I think would have gone over my head just from one watch.
Yeah. I do think watching it a second time helped a lot. There's a lot going on in this pilot for sure. A few things I think it's important to mention is, so on our first viewing, we watched it with the original German vocals. Dialogue, there you go. And subtitles. And then on our rewatch, while we were sort of taking notes and stuff, we put it in English dub.
Yeah, but still with the original English translation subtitles,
which does not match up with the dub.
It really doesn't,
which is
folks.
Weird.
Yeah.
So we are sort of seeing both sides of this. I'm visually impaired, so I struggle sometimes with reading subtitles and with following along with foreign stuff. So this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. That being said, I mean, I took multiple foreign film classes. It's just been a while. I like the show a lot. I think watching it twice definitely helped me actually form some sort of criticisms, I think, that I didn't necessarily have on the first viewing because of the fact that first viewing I was spending so much time just keeping up with everything.
There's a lot of learning characters and relationships that I think our mental energy went to on first watch.
So first of all, as far as things I like, I think the tone's great, the music's great, cinematography's great. It feels like it has, an actual budget and production value behind it. Something I struggle with a lot of foreign stuff that I've seen is it feeling sort of low end. And that's because Hollywood just has so many
money,
so much bucks to spend, but they definitely intrigued me. I think the writing is good. I think that there's a vast world here where in this little town. And that's exciting. At the same time, I think in some ways that was also to the pilot, at least, detriment, in that I don't feel like I necessarily spent enough time with any individual person to fully connect with anyone. Like Jonas is supposed to be our protagonist, and I don't feel like there's quite enough of him. Any feelings you had like that?
I am inclined to agree. I did notice that. I think, the first watch told me, like, this is your main character, but on second watch, I was like, we really don't spend a lot of time with him. And in a way, I think that he and Ulrich are both the actual main characters.
Like the dual protagonists.
Yeah. And I think that that's on purpose. I think that there is an important then and now kind of, story here. And given the age groups and the time periods, I think we're supposed to have, like, who will be the protagonist of then as a little, like, prediction for what we're going to see. I think Ulrich will be the protagonist of the 80s, and Jonas is the protagonist of today. And that they're setting that up, even though on first, like, instinct, it does seem like it's going to be, like, 60% Jonas.
I agree with you. And I think that contributes to, there's a few different vibes that you definitely get here, whether it be Stranger Things, but I also definitely feel an It vibe.
The yellow coat. Maybe.
I was going more with the time jump, but yes, the yellow coat. I didn't even think of that. It's a great point.
Speaking of things missed on first watch, I noticed some vibrant colors, but I didn't really think about where they were appearing and going through. I think that is, like, a conscious choice in a show as, like, washed out as this, to see, like, the vivid yellow, the vivid blue, the vivid pinkish red, like, and even the brown, because even brown isn't gray. So these actual colors stood out to me more, and I'm, like, mentally and in a notes app trying to keep track of, like, where we're seeing
who everyone is. Oh, also, like, forgive us if it takes us a little bit to get everyone's German name exactly right and everyone's family relation. We are writing these things down.
We're trying.
We're doing our best.
But I don't know if I'll pronounce Bartosz.
I'm just calling him Barty.
Beeman. Yo.
Well, it's also when we rewatched with the dubbing,
oh my God,
they don't say the names right at all.
No.
Mikkel?
Mickle. They pronounce it like nickel.
Yeah.
Mickle. And it's like everyone in German pronounce it Mikhail. It's not that hard. Like, I just watched someone criticize me pronouncing that. But, it seems feasible to have the dubbers say it correctly.
Yeah.
Jonas is Jonas.
Yeah, in the dub.
English.
Yeah. Yeah. We will be trying to say Jonas.
Yes.
All right. Should I get into my quick recap?
Yes, you shall.
Quick capping it up. Get ready. All right, so we start in a bunker filled with images of our protagonists throughout the ages. There are very many faces of their lives, and there's grenades. Ooh. We then cut over to Michael, who is in Jonas's home. We later find out he is Jonas's father, and the camera pulls out to reveal that Michael is hanging himself. He leaves a note behind that says, "Do not open until November 4th at 10:13 p.m., At the time, it's June, I believe.
Mhm.
So, mystery.
What
Then
does he know?
Ooh, the
There's also the,
future.
dialogue about when time being linear and how
Dr.
it's
Manhattan's
not.
doing a
And
great little VO at the beginning.
yeah.
So we cut over to Jonas waking up, and he is none too happy. He doesn't have his toast. He doesn't have his electricity. What's going on here for Yo-Yo? And so meanwhile, his mom is banging in more ways than one. She is having sex with Ulrich, the kappa. And Jonas is totally, he doesn't hear all the bump and grind, and he just goes off to school, talks to his therapist, who ends up being the husband of the female cop we'll meet later, and father of Franziska.
The geek goddess.
I think you added that part.
I mean, everyone's like, ew, you're such a dweeb, you're such a geek. And I'm like,
where did that come from? It's so weird.
I don't know.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
That's it. So he's going off to school, and Ulrich is running back to his real family.
Ooh.
Damn. So he is married to Katrina, who we find out later is the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And he has 3 children, all with M names.
That doesn't get confusing
Yes.
either.
So there is Magnus, the old stoner boy. There is Martha, Batman and Superman's mother.
Idealist
yes.
girl.
And Mikael, who is Houdini. Woohoo.
Magician. It all starts with M.
So they are all prepping for school and such, and, causing, trouble as the children do. They go off to school, and we find out, hey, some kid is missing. The whole little town of Wyndham is in a tizzy because Eric Doberface is missing. So they have a little school assembly where they're like, hey, guys, if you know shit, let us know. And meanwhile, Jonas is like, he's meeting up with his buddy Barty, and Barty's okay. But then he finds out that Barty's dating Martha. And
Martha.
And Yo-Yo and Martha, something was going on there.
Something happened last summer other than his dad dying. And
yeah, Jonas knows what she was doing last summer. And then we cut over to Ulrich at the Copper Place.
The police station, man.
And he is, dealing with the parents of Eric, who are very frustrated about these cops aren't doing what they should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yo, guys, it's going to be cool. So the parents go away, and he talks to Charlotte, who, again, is Franziska's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I think Eric just ran away. That's what I think. And she's like, but also, your brother disappeared 30 years ago. And he's like, it has nothing to do with that. And
except they don't, unfortunately, just say that there. And we, throughout the episode, have to be like, what about his brother? Yeah. And then that all comes probably full circle.
So then he goes and sees his mama because she keeps calling the emergency number because she's a little loop.
Yeah.
And so she's still seeing, signs of the brother and things like that. We'll get back to that.
She sees things in the woods.
Yeah. And so he's a little worried about her. So then we cut back to the school, and Bartaj has this great plan where he's like, hey, if Eric was murdered or something, his weed's probably still in the cave area. Let's go get lots of weed. We can sell it. We can smoke it. Friendship time forever. So
high school shenanigans.
So Barty, Martha, Magnus, and Yo-Yo are going to go get some smack. Mm-hmm. And
I thought smack was heroin.
It is.
Okay.
And so they are like, we'll meet up later. Meanwhile, we have a few things with some of the other parents. We have Bartaj's mother is running a hotel. It's not going well for her. No one wants to come to a place where someone's son is missing. I have a feeling that things weren't going well before that either, but it's not helping.
Right.
So she's upset.
Something's up financially. They also allude to Bartaj's rich dad. And I'm like, you don't say someone's dad is rich and then also show the mom being like, how dare the bank call me at my place of business and have things be okay.
Yeah. Then there's some more flirting between Ulrich and Hannah, who is Jonas's mother. And we also see her go to the power plant where she is a masseur and helps out, I think, the manager or the owner.
Director.
Of that. And he has a scar. Ooh, find out about that later.
I love mysterious scars.
Yeah. And then we go to the nighttime parents assembly thing. Because throughout this whole thing, Ulrich is trying to get Hannah to come to this. And Katrina is here as the principal being like, this is what we got to do. We got to try to like make sure that the kids are safe and stuff. But we have Charlotte being like, hey, he might have just run away. And then we have Regina, who's the hotel owner, being like, hey, you're making a big kerfuffle out of nothing. And it's parental politics. Oh, man, parental politics. So meanwhile, the children are going to get some of that smack I talked about. And so
it's dope.
Smack.
Dope.
So they're going down the train tracks, and we have Jonas and Martha sort of again flirting, talking about their old times when things were swell. And they have a talk about deja vu, which we'll get back to later. And then Magnus comes with Mikael because the parents are off at the parent thing. And so he was
and he has a stomach bug, I guess?
No, I think they were talking about the babysitter.
Oh, the babysitter. That makes more sense. Okay. Thanks, German, English combo, confusing me.
So they get there, and there's a weird old chair there that had the dope in it, but it's not there. But Franziska, she has it, and Barty is not having it, so he just lays hands on her, which, whoa, not about that. So, yeah.
Well, but then they get their comeuppance because everything
goes bad.
Yeah.
I guess. Does he get his comeuppance, though? It feels like everybody else is one who's worse off than he is.
I guess you're right.
So once Barty has the dope, he hears
Just call it weed, man.
Once there's the weed in possession, there's a strange sound in the cave, and the flashlights start flickering, and they all run for their lives. And then Jonas has Mikael, and they're trying to run away. Jonas falls down, and he sees his dead father. And then Jonas runs away again, and when he meets up with the other kids, Mikael is missing. Meanwhile, at the school assembly thing, this old guy in a home, he walked out of the home, he came to the parent thing, and he's like, it's happening again! And
don't do Helgi dirty. Helgi. I'm Olga.
I shouldn't do him dirty?
Don't do him dirty.
It's happening again.
Yeah.
Much better?
Better.
Okay.
He deserves respect. You don't know what he's been through.
I don't. That's true. So, and meanwhile, Michael's mother,
Jonas's grandmother.
Yeah. She opens the letter because now it's November 4th, 10:13 p.m. She reads it. She weeps. This is my biggest criticism, I think, of the episode.
Yeah.
They spend a long time on her with the letter. At least 3 or 4 scenes.
Yeah.
And we don't actually learn anything new from that entire, like, we learn that she has it, that she knows to open it. And that's the first time we see her, we learn that. Then we see her like 4 more times. And
one of those times is important because Hannah calls her out of like, with like disgust in her voice, like, if you want us out of the house, just say so. You're avoiding your grandson. You're sick.
Yeah.
And the grandmother just kind of like sits there and takes it. So presumably she owns the house that Jonas lives at. Like, there's clearly drama. She's been cut out of a photo. Like,
I the thing is that I'm struggling with here is to me, I'm like, you could have started her. She could have had one scene near the end where she hears that message, looks at the note, looks at the time, then opens it, and then sobs. And I understand that building it up throughout the episode, like, builds up the tension and the tone or whatever. But to me, that you're building up too much if at the end we don't get another piece of information.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could argue the piece of information is that she reads it at the time that Mikael goes missing.
Yeah, that is information. That is important.
I guess.
I think that these are all important parallels. Like Helgi realizing that it's too late as he steps out into the rain, Mikhail going missing, and her, reading it and like starting to be shocked, putting her hands in front of her mouth and that whole thing. I do agree with you though that there were a few too many like
cutbacks to her.
Look at this. Look at the clock. Like I really think that was one of those things for an audience that doesn't necessarily like get it or isn't paying as much attention of being like, oh, she's waiting for 10:13.
Yeah.
But I am a little I'm disappointed that for all the times that after that, once we showed her like crying, that none of that actually directly added information.
Yeah. I just didn't think that for the amount of time they spent with her that there was enough payoff. And I'm sure there will be going forward, but it just felt like an excessive amount of the episode.
There's already so much going on in this episode, though. I'm like, God, if there was more in this, maybe that would have been too much.
So Mikhail's missing. All the kids call their family. Everybody's freaking out. Ulrich is very upset. He's looking for his kid. Eventually, they find a body.
Of a child,
But it's not Mikhail. It's someone else that Ulrich seems to notice and remember.
He recognizes the shoes, the jacket,
and the
Walkman.
face is all destroyed, and his eyes are all messed up and burnt and stuff.
Across the temples, too.
And speaking of which, throughout the episode, we have seen a few small moments of Eric in a child's room, in a...
like a bunk bed playroom.
Yeah. From
bunker.
The 80s.
Yes, from the 80s.
With an old TV playing 80s music videos. And so time shenanigans are probably happening.
Yeah.
He gets taken to sit down in this funky old chair.
He's strapped into this device.
And his eyes and face area are covered by a dangerous machine.
Ooh.
What could it mean?
And who's the person strapping him into it?
Strapping young lad.
Oh, someone in a hooded cloak.
All right. So that's my quick recap. And now
we all cap.
Now we have a few points of interest we wanted to dive into more.
Okay, so I just brought up the shadowy figure in the hooded jacket. We see him silhouetted in the Winden Caves earlier. We also have Ulrich's mom talking about seeing someone in the woods with a giant head. I could see how like a hooded silhouette.
I don't think it actually has a giant head.
Right. And and they show the meds. Like, I think she's not supposed to be like a reliable narrator, but nonetheless
have some information.
That kind of, I could see how that silhouette would look that way. Who is this person?
So my assumption is that he's someone we already know, but a different time version of them, which is why they have to hide their identity.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a future Jonas or his dad still alive doing things, or
someone we don't suspect at all.
Someone from the 80s come to now, like young Ulrich or some crazy shenanigans.
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan's in it again.
Maybe. We do have something I do want to bring up is even though they're putting this emphasis on the 80s, on the 33 years ago, and the photos in the very, very beginning, they are seemingly showing like 3 time periods. You have like the people who are adults, like middle-aged adults now, we see them as teens in the 80s. And you see the people who are elderly now as middle-aged then. But the people who are elderly now, we also see their childhood photos from presumably like the 50s. And that, they're black and white and they're kids. So I wouldn't be surprised if that also has some other, thing in play. Yeah.
I realized, so we didn't really talk, before we go into more of the like points of interest.
Right.
Any of these characters sticking out to you in positive ways?
I like Jonas.
Yeah.
I like Ulrich.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. I'm sitting here being like a little bit questioning of how I'm supposed to feel about some of the female characters. And I'm not connecting with any of them yet. And I am a little worried about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should be. I don't know if this is just a me thing. I'm sure there are people who did, but I think that they're like, I'm not as invested in any of them as I am in like these two guys.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot of that has to do with just the amount of time we spent with them.
Right.
Because I would argue, I think that Hannah's more sympathetic in the Hannah Ulrich thing than Ulrich is. Like, I guess maybe he's more charismatic, and that's why you connect with him more.
He's more sympathetic in that he has the stuff with his missing brother.
Yeah, but he's less sympathetic in that he's cheating on a family as opposed to Hannah, who is, in a tough spot place. And like, yeah, she's not doing a great thing, but like, I don't blame her in the same way that I blame him.
Yeah.
But I agree that it's like he has a fuller character going on right now. Again, for one episode, but I get where you're coming from.
Also, Hannah's not like innocent. She knows that Ulrich is married, and she's like on purpose trying to avoid his wife.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that I'm sure there are people that are like big fans of her. I'm not saying I dislike any of the female characters. I'm just saying I'm not like as invested. There's no one for me to be invested in quite yet.
I agree with that. I do like how they set up the Jonas Martha stuff, because it's more interesting to me that there's already a history there than if they were just like, oh, wow, she caught my eye, she's new to school or something, something like that. I think that, the fact that there's history there, and also that neither of them seems to be being like overly teenagery about it is good so far.
So you're right about their relationship. No one is overly teenagery. But to me, a lot of the work of this episode in terms of Martha, Magnus, and Mikhail was that they paint them as such annoying kids in that like family scene that I just was like not on board with them. I was fine with them on second watch, but on first watch I was like, Magnus is this like
asshole,
stoner asshole, is bullying his kid brother. The littlest brother just won't listen to his mom and just like is being like a whiny little shit too. And of course he's the one who like goes missing, and then you have Martha who's like, I won't eat until every child in the world has a meal. And I'm like, oh my God, you people were insufferable when I was in high school. Like,
I don't disagree. Yeah. That like archetype for her was not an appealing archetype.
No, and I feel like they completely abandon that later on.
They bring up her like theories about the nuclear people and stuff later.
Yeah.
I think that was supposed to be in a similar vein. But
that one's a lot more grounded for kids who live in a town of I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm sure I'll like her more later, especially now with her brother missing.
Well, that's the thing is I think to a certain degree they, like for Magnus, I think they make him extra of a dick to his brother so that he feels worse about it when his brother's gone.
Yeah.
And I think that the best scene of the siblings is when it's the three of them in the woods. And there's like, even though like Magnus is still being a dick to his sister and stuff, like there's believable chemistry of siblings in that scene that I think I could connect with.
Yeah.
So I think that there's the thing that I like the most is I think there's potential with everybody. Nobody like outright pushed me away.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, on second watch, once I kind of got the glimpses of the sympathetic, grounded stuff, I was just more on board with them already. Yeah. So I think the second episode, I won't have these kind of like hesitant feelings. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Jumping back a little bit, I agree with you. I like Jonas quite a bit. I think that his backstory and everything he's struggling with is good. I think the fact that he still has a bit of like a sense of humor, but also some anger and some fear. Like he has enough different emotions going on that I'm on board with for sure.
Yeah. There's something I wanted to kind of talk about. I know we're jumping around a little bit in the points of interest, but they're not really meant to be super chronological. We have him questioning as he walks with his therapist, like, why did my dad do this? Why did he hang himself? Like, why didn't he leave an explanation? It turns out maybe he did, but Jonas doesn't know that, which is its own level of like messed up. But we have his therapist asking him like, are you still seeing your dad? And they say like, oh, in your dreams, in Jonas's dreams. And that like, that's a transition from the very first scene. Like Michael hangs himself and then Jonas wakes up. So maybe he found him. Maybe he's imagining it. Maybe that actually is exactly-ish what happened. But there's enough hesitation there where Jonas might actually be seeing his father.
Yeah, well, given the fact that we see him later, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And my point is, I think that's not like the first time that he saw his dad outside of sleep.
I think that's why people at school were looking at him and why he had to go away. He's not just dealing with grief, the normal amount of grief, I guess.
Right.
He's gone to the point where he's seeing things.
Yeah. That's a good point. I did forget about how his classmates kind of seemingly reacted to him. So.
Yeah, I mean, in a show like this, one would assume that he actually is seeing his dad or echoes of his dad or his dad, like he's not, like there's a version of him that's not dead yet or something like that. Maybe there's a mixture where you're seeing like, he's seeing behind the matrix like he's talking about.
Right.
I don't know. But because the whole thing of him seeing his dad looking all like oily, maybe like I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be blood or mud or oil or what.
It looked black in the light, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was. Yeah.
So why do you think Michael killed himself? B, my biggest question is, will we see that by the end of season 1, or is that like the very end of the show? Like, does the show end with Michael choosing to kill himself?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it'll be sooner than the end of the show. Again, going by very little information. But I think, in my opinion, on storytelling, if you set up in your very first question, it being a mystery to some characters and to the audience of why did this, character kill himself, then you kind of, that's the beginning. You kind of should pay that off at this end and introduce a different question along the way for season 2, or in that last chapter of season 1 for season 2.
Okay, interesting.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, but I could also see them not doing that and me being okay with it. Yeah,
I'm interested to see whether Michael is killing himself because of guilt, if he's doing it to like save people. He just can't live with what he dealt with, what he's seen and all that stuff. I mean, we hypothesized whether he was one of the people who worked at the power plant. We base that off of the discussion that the director had with Hannah. Like, he seemed to know Michael. It wasn't just like, a casual conversation between a masseuse and the client. And also Jonas like stops in front of the power plant a lot. Like, he's kind of drawn to it, haunted by it, more so than we see anyone else acknowledging it, really. And speaking of the points of interest stuff, the guy that Hannah is giving the massage to, who the plant manager or whatever, came here 33 years ago. So that times out with when Ulrich's brother was missing. All that stuff. So I kind of like wrote down some of the info. So the Winden nuclear power plant was authorized in 1960, and now in 2020 it's being decommissioned. It's the longest it is the power plant in Germany that has the longest amount of failure-free operations. So it's also, I am thinking also of like the town where nothing bad happens except once every 33 years, and it's a contract with the devil or something. It's the nuclear monster. And yes, like you said, the director guy has a mysterious scar. It's been 33 years, lots of the photos. So we'll see. Certainly think we'll be seeing some jumping around. So what's next up on the points of interest? So I poked fun at Mikhail's magic earlier, but I think that this actually has an important tie-in to some of the themes or mysteries of this show. He and Ulrich are sitting at the table, and Mikhail has a little yellow figurine, and he puts it under a yellow cup. Does some whoosha whoosha, and he lifts up the yellow cup, and the figurine is gone. But when he lifts up the blue cup, it's sitting there. And Ulrich asks, "How did you do that?"
And Mikhail asks, says it's not how, but when. And we cut to Jonas.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the cooler
Yellow jacket Jonas.
Jonas the Yellow Jacket. Yeah, so this is the thing that I think this and then the mention they talk about later about deja vu to me are the ones that smack the most of parallel universes as opposed to just time travel, because it's going somewhere else, hearing a message from the other side, seeing ripples and things like that. I think that to me that implies more than just time travel.
Right. What actually that is, I don't know yet.
But I think that magic trick moment is one of the standouts. I thought that was cool.
Absolutely. And I think it went over it went over my head on first watch. So on second watch, my mind was like blown that they, fed that in there with this character who ends up disappearing, and where will he go, and who might he be in a different world or in a different thing. Cool. Ooh, what if Mikhail's the hooded figure? We see him in his skull hood. I mean, he's not the only one to wear a hoodie. Yeah. But, it's such a distinctive thing that it could be a tie-in of, like, he's the one who kidnapped himself. I don't know.
Oh, he's the one who kidnapped himself. See, I was thinking more about how it would be interesting because he talks about why would someone kidnap someone and take someone and lock them away? And if he was the one who locked Eric away,
that could be another factor of, like...
Yeah. I don't think so, but I think it's a cool idea.
I'm not saying I'm like 100% committed to this theory, but it's a thought.
But if it isn't real, she's watching the show no more. All right, so I think that's pretty much everything for us this week. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the podcast and about this episode and episode 2 for next week. You can leave us a comment on the YouTube video down below if you're watching it that way, or you can email us at ourpodcastfeedback@gmail.com. That's ourpodcastfeedback@gmail.com. So yeah, if you want to say anything about episode 1 or episode 2, we'd love to hear it. And if you have any thoughts about how we can make the podcast better, where we want to live and learn. So thank you guys so much for listening. Also send us feedback about how to end the show, because we don't know like the cutesy things we could say because we don't know enough about the show yet.
Or German. I know what Scheiße means. They say it a lot. So I could be like, Scheiße.
Perfect ending. All right,
guys. No, not doing that again.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And have a nice day.
We hope you're doing okay.